I think that's fascinating how long the colon is. Of course, we're going to have a really bloated tummy at some point. Like that just makes so much sense. Yeah, we kind of just deal with it and don't really understand it. But when we understand that, we're still going to maybe be in the same situation, but it makes a bit more sense of what actually is going on inside. And with IBS, where does it come from? Is it a genetic thing? Can it be a genetic thing that we're born with as children, or is it lifestyle triggered?
Good question. We really don't know for sure because the microbiome is complicated, right? And we all think it's linking to the microbiome. So your microbiome is very similar to your mum's microbiome, particularly up until the point where you leave home. And so if your mum has IBS, then maybe you'll have IBS as well because your bacteria are fairly similar. So
Is
the
that because
population
you're eating similar food? You say like because you're living at
eating
home, or
similar foods, because you're in contact, very close physical contact with her body when you were born,
yeah.
because you're both are living in the same environment. You're picking up the same bacteria from toilets, from surfaces, from the kitchen, and because you're eating similar diets. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the people you live with, your gut bacteria starts to get closer to. So it's hard to say. If your parents have IBS, maybe you're more likely to have IBS because your microbiomes are more similar rather than because it's a genetic thing. So we don't think there's a genetic element necessarily at all. We think it's mostly linked to the microbiome. And then you can get it because of food poisoning, antibiotics, acute or chronic stress, these things that change the gut bacteria. And maybe you have a susceptibility to it already. But yeah, there's lots of reasons why we get it. And it is to say, for lots of people, we can make it certainly much, much better than it is at present.
I feel like one of the myths is someone says, I used to eat so much bread and now I'm intolerant to gluten. Is that a myth, or is there actually some science behind that?
Well, gluten is one of those funny things where it's been so demonized, and it's really it's just a protein that's found in wheat. And I think if we called it a protein rather than people thinking it was a carbohydrate, everyone would be all right with it now, right? So
All the marketing, isn't it?
thanks to protein marketing, big protein. So actually gluten is one of those funny things. What was very much true, but both with lactose and with gluten and many other foods indeed, the less you eat them, the less of the bacteria that help to process them you have. And so when you eat them, you haven't got the bacteria that help to process them. So your gut bacteria is a bit confused. And then it makes it that you don't tolerate it as well, right? So the less of these things that you eat, the more likely you are to react to them when you have them. And what I found, particularly during COVID, is that loads of people went keto or went on very low carbohydrate diets and ended up with IBS on the back of that because they'd cut out all whole grains. They weren't eating much fruit and vegetables. So then they try to reintroduce these things and they have really uncomfortable digestion out of nowhere. So the less we have of these things, the less tolerant we can be to them. But secondly, to that, is that actually as we get older, the diversity of our microbiome, so the breadth of different bacteria that we have that help to digest all of our foods, they slowly go down. So in our 40s and post menopause for women, the diversity, the breadth of gut bacteria we have reduces. And so our tolerance of some things can be a bit more tricky. So there are many reasons why that might happen to people.
Interesting. Yeah, women really go through a lot. Gosh, don't we?
No magic.
Yeah. All the stuff that goes on. Is there anything that we can kind of do to combat that, or what happens? Someone comes to you and they say, "I used to be able to eat this, now I can't." And I don't want to touch on lifestyle factors just now because I feel like that's going to be a whole other thing that we'll get to in just a moment. But what tangible things can they do?
Yeah. So when I'm working with patients, what I will do, so say for example, it's an individual thing. It's just gluten in inverted commas because that's a nightmare. It's just dairy, again, a bit of a nightmare. When it's just one thing, what I'll do is work with them on choosing the best probiotic that we can find for them. So we're seeding some new good bacteria. We'll feed that good bacteria some prebiotics or with their diet. So we'll work on making sure their gut function is or their gut microbiome is diversifying again, getting it to where we want it to be. And then what I would do with those people is a very, very slow introduction of dairy or gluten. And I'm talking about a tiny, tiny bit week 1, tiny bit week 2, tiny bit week 3, the smallest amounts you could imagine. And then we see how they get on from there. And it's like gradually sort of sorting the microbiome out a little bit, but then gradually introducing it again to these foods which we've struggled to tolerate before.
Yeah, so adding in those supplements that will actually build up the bacteria that's going to be breaking down the food, and then slowly introducing this food again, and actually it kind of works together and you build up that tolerance almost. Do people have symptoms kind of throughout that, or is it just less severe?
It's usually we get to a point where it's such a small amount to start with that they are absolutely fine and it's okay. Their body doesn't even know they've had it. And then by the time it gets to the big stuff, the bacteria is kind of a bit more comfortable with it and a bit more used to it. what I should caveat this with is I'm talking exclusively about gluten intolerance here, not celiac disease. So celiac disease is a lifelong allergic type reaction. It's not an allergic reaction, but allergic type reaction to gluten, where gluten is completely toxic in the body and actually kills off those little villi in the bowel, so you can't absorb nutrients properly. So in celiac disease, they must never have gluten, and there's no reintroducing process or anything that can help that, unfortunately.
And with those severe allergies and intolerances that a lot of people, well, I say that confidently, maybe you can correct me. A lot of people are born with?
Yeah.
Question mark. Why is that? What are they missing? Like, how does that manifest itself? Like, can we not just add more supplements in to break it down?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it depends on the allergy or the intolerance itself. So there are some allergies. We think that allergies are born from, we call it the hygiene hypothesis. So we've not been exposed to enough of these kinds of things. Our immune system doesn't recognize them properly, and our immune function goes a bit haywire. And they're becoming, allergies are much, much more common than they ever have been.
Mhm.
And same with celiac disease is increasing, I think. So your question was, can we not supplement and it can go away?
Well, just kind of where do they come from? Why do some people have allergies? What are they missing in their digestive system?
Yes, allergies are very much more an immune reaction. So in
Where is that in your body
food
then?
allergies, within your immune system itself, so it's like within your bone marrow, some of it will come from your gut, but it's very much linked to your whole immune system. So you can have like a IgG or an IgA mediated food allergy. And that usually manifests as sometimes vomiting, sometimes burning, sometimes a swelling in the mouth and throat that people have experienced, sometimes rashes around the mouth or sores within the mouth. But food allergies are always very different, very separate to food intolerances, and can be easily tested for and diagnosed, whereas food intolerances are much more difficult to diagnose. And unfortunately, none of the commercial food intolerance tests are evidence based whatsoever. So we must never do them or use them.